Okay, so as the title says, this is how I practice for the Highland Games. A little disclaimer before we get into it, none of these ideas or techniques are my own. It's been something that I've been accumulating from other coaches and athletes over the years. And this is not an exhaustive list of all the ways you can practice for the Highland Games, but this is just what I do. This is what I like, and I think is, for me, generally the best way to do it. And all the information in this video is based on having all or most of the implements with exception to caber, and we'll discuss why that is later. Okay, so the first thing to consider is how many events you will practice in each session. I typically do 2 to 3. I do count Braemar and Openstone as one event in the context of practice, and that's just because generally one leads into the other, and so I just count it as one. And if I were to do 5 to 6 events per practice, you know, that feels like a lot to me. Towards the end of the practice, you will start to get fatigued, your technique will start to break down, and when you're trying to make meaningful changes to an event, to your technique, it's best to not be fatigued to do it. I always try to consider of guarding my energy, so that way I can just take the few events, put as much focus as I can onto those, and use my time wisely while I'm out there. Okay, so next we have one of the most underutilized tools in a throws practice, and that's going to be a tape measure. There have been a lot of guys in the past who've condemned using tape measures in practice. I don't really subscribe to that. I think it's the best way to monitor and track your progress. It's far more efficient to measure your progress and know if what you're working on is actually working, instead of waiting weeks and months between games to find out that your throws actually didn't get any better with all these little changes that you've done. Because eyeballing stuff in the field isn't good enough. You have to actually measure it and log it. And I log everything. All my practice throws I log in a notebook. The only thing I don't actually log are warm-ups, drills, and most drills, and full throws that I'm making like a really big change to, and because some of those just aren't really worth logging quite yet. Once they get a little more dialed in and refined and consistent, then you start logging it and having a better idea of what that actually looks like. And the reason to log too is there are many different seasons like in the Highland Games, right? You have your off season, early season, that dreaded mid-season slump, late season. And if you're lucky and have put in a bunch of work and you have these goals, you're probably in championship season. And it's good to have the data to support that, we're trending in the right direction at the right times of year. It's good to look back on that stuff and have a record of what you're going for. It's just another tool to help you accomplish those goals. Another tool to add is video. Feeling good or bad about a throw is one thing. Actually seeing what's right or wrong with it is another. Being able to watch tape after practice will help you identify the little things that you don't notice while actually doing the throw, like hand or head position. Video can even like reveal like speed and intensity that you're just not picking up on during the practice. So after watching videos, I generally will delete most of them. I will save the ones that I noticed a particular thing on, and I will keep those videos around as a reference to see the progress. And at some point, I will delete them to make room for the new. But video is absolutely crucial to dialing in your technique and getting better. Okay, so now for warm-ups. As I get older, I realize it's kind of a cliche at this point, but as I get older, I'm putting a lot more value on warming up. I don't always do it, but when I do, I definitely feel like a little bit more ready for practice or even before competition. Again, I'm no expert on how to warm up, but this is kind of what I do. It's very simple. I do a light jog around the field. I'll throw some high knees in there. You know, I'll backpedal a little bit. And then when I get back to my stuff, I'll pull up my bands and kind of go through a band circuit. It's definitely not the best way for a warm up, but I will link down below some channels of other guys who are way more in depth. They love the movement, the body priming, all that kind of stuff to get ready for activity. I'll link those guys down below so you can get some more information on that, because that's who I watch. That's who I try to emulate in those contexts. So that's pretty much it. Do warm-ups. It is good for you. Okay, now under range throwing. Range throwing is where you put a far mark and a close mark, and all your practice throws are going to fall within that range. It's been around for a long time. There's a great article. I'm going to link it down below so you guys can read it. And it's kind of where I got the idea for range throwing. It's an article by Judd Logan, and it goes into way more detail than I would and I do for my practices in range throwing. Read that. You might do it his way, you might do it my way. And my way is way simpler. My far mark is going to be set out at 2 to 3 feet under my practice PR. And then the close mark is going to be 5 to 6 feet closer than that. And I just want to throw within that small range. And the reason to do that is when you're trying to facilitate change on a technique, it's better to put a little bit of intensity on it. A medium amount of intensity to get it to actually take effect. But read the article, and it'll cover that way better than I do, but just kind of the idea of having that close and far mark to fall within on your practice. That's kind of the main philosophy there. Okay, so now we have the 2 adjustment rule. It's a simple rule I like to follow. That helps me really incorporate new techniques. So when making adjustments to my technique, I aim to do 2 things. One is to find something that needs to be worked on, whether it's keeping the low point on your weights low and to the center, or keeping your hammers to the right, little things like that. And part of step 1 is trying to isolate that issue, and you can use drills or low intensity movement to accomplish that. And once you kind of have that dialed in, you go to the second adjustment, and that is incorporating this new movement into the full throw. The goal is to try to find a rhythm with the full throw, because sometimes it can be a challenge to introduce, go from drill or our low intensity movement to a higher to moderate intensity full throw. But you got to remember, when you're doing this, you're still trying to fall within that range that we have set up. You're not trying to throw bombs right now. There will be a time for that. But at this point in practice, we are just trying to introduce the new things and be comfortable in the full throw with these new movements. After I've got a bunch of throws in on an event, the last few tosses are going to be big. This is when I try to apply what I was working on to a harder, faster, more intense throw. I've known people who never try to go big in practice. They were told early on that there's no reason to go big in practice, to never go 100%. And I think there's nuance to be addressed there, that it can't be a hard, fast rule to never go hard. Because if you're in a competition and you only ever do these soft, timid practice throws, these very technical throws, you're missing out on a lot of intensity that needs to come out during competition. And so in that case, I use the last 3 throws of each event during a practice, and I give it all I got. It kind of gives me an idea of, did the stuff I just do lock in? Am I hitting the technique in the positions that I want and still be able to give it the beans? And so that hopefully that translates into competition day. Okay, now on to the events. In practice, I like to keep Braemar and Open Stone together because one leads into the other very nicely. I use a 16-pound shot for Braemar and open stone. Sometimes I will throw a 20-pound shot for the Braemar, but not always. I don't think it's super critical. It's more just the positions and the technique kind of going in there. And I find it easier to use a shot put because it's consistent. It's a round ball. It's always going to be the same. You don't have to find like a good handle like you would on a stone to get a good throw in. So I think shots are perfect for that. And I find it easier to go from a small ball to a bigger stone in competition than the other way around. And kind of the prescription that I follow for stones, it's going to be 3 to 5 standing, non-reverse stone throws. And then I will do like a more Braemar style, exaggerated lean, big reverse at the end. I'll do those for like 5 to 8. Then I go to the full throw, the open stone style, modified South African, the MSA, and I'll do that non-reverse for 3 to 5 reps, and then I do the full throw with a reverse for 8 to 10 reps. Pretty simple. There's a lot of technique and a lot of ways to practice throwing stones because it's essentially just a shot put. There's a lot of information out there on how to like break up that event and to make it really work for you. Just got to look it up. And so then we go on to heavyweight and lightweight. I treat them very similar. I don't really do anything different between those two. And I don't do a lot of drills for the weights, and I don't do one turns. I've never found one turns to be super useful in the weights. That being said, I have used one turns in the past to kind of break my previous technique and how I was doing it, and just kind of rebuild from there. I feel like that's the only time I've ever really used one turn successfully. Because I don't one turn in competition. I don't need to be good at it in practice. But the prescription for weights, it's the first 2 or 3 are going to be pretty low intensity, kind of easing into the movement, and then I do 8 to 10 reps at full speed or technique speed, and then we go into heavy and light hammer. Just like the weights, I do heavy and light hammer, just like the same with each other. But I do specific warm-ups for hammer. This is something that I've always just felt is very helpful because throwing hammers for me is pretty taxing, and if you're not ready for it, it can break you pretty good. So I do hammer specific winds where I walk forward and wind it around me, and I walk backwards, 5-10 steps forward, 5-10 steps back, and then I switch to go the opposite direction, go left and right. All the hammer stuff I pretty much do both directions except full throws. And then when I get into the throws, blades on, tacky on, always use blades and tacky for hammers. I've never felt a lot of benefit from using no tacky or no blades, because in competition, that's what you're going to be using. You're going to be using blades and tacky. That's what makes it go far, and that's what you should be doing in practice. But that first toss, it's just going to be one wind and then a release. I'll do that for 2. And then the second one, I'll go around for 2 winds and then release. I do that for 2. And then I get into the full throw. The first 2 are probably a little bit lighter and a little bit easier. And then from there, the last 7 to 8 are going to be at a much higher intensity for like competition style practice toss. And then we go into caber. Hot take on caber, don't practice it. I don't think it pays you a lot of like benefit to practice caber. If you have one and you want to practice it, by all means do it. It might help you. It's definitely not going to hurt. I just don't think you need to waste time on a Saturday when you only have so much time to be out practicing to waste it on caber. If you go to competitions and if you go to games enough, you get enough exposure to cabers that one day you will learn it. It will make sense. The pick, the catch, the sprint, and the pull will all make sense at some point. And it happens pretty quick. If you're competing 7-8 times a year, which is a pretty good amount for an amateur, you will pick up the caber pretty quickly and you'll understand it. And then the gym is what builds a big caber toss. And I firmly believe that if you're building yourself in the gym, getting stronger, the technique with caber will come and it'll just be easier if you're a big, strong fellow. And then sheaf. Sheaf toss is the best event by far. It's the Lord's event, never forget it. And it's a very simple one. You don't need uprights. You don't need a standard to practice on. You just need, some open space around you. And you just want to make sure that when you're practicing sheaf, it's landing behind you. I use a tree a tree limb in my front yard. That's kind of like what I want to hit. I want to be around this mark for good tosses, for good practices, be at it or above it, and just make sure it's landing behind me. And when it comes to the throws, I only do maybe 10 to 15 reps at, all of them are at the same speed. It's at a pretty high intensity. I've always found with sheaf, it's harder to get the right position while going slow. The only way I get the right position is if I do everything like I would in competition. And so that's what also makes it really simple for me. I don't have to break it down into little drills and things like that. And the last event is WOB, weight over bar. Again, you don't need a standard to throw over. I built one in my backyard, and it's very useful. It's a very useful tool to have to measure out a certain height and throw over it, but you do not need that. All you need is just pull big and make it land behind you. If it keeps landing in front of you, you got some adjustments, and that's all you really need to know. If it's landing behind you, you're good. And there, again, I don't do a lot of drills. I used to do a lot of the water bottle drill. You might see those videos around from other people where you stick a water bottle between your legs and you swing the weight in between your legs and then you drop down and knock the water bottle out of the way. It teaches you to come in high and go down low, and that's how you get a good, weight over bar pull. But again, I'll do those for 10 to 12 reps, and that's pretty much it when it comes to the events. Okay, a couple things to know. If you're having a bad practice and things aren't really going your way, you're fouling left and right, you're in a bad mood or whatever, there's a few options. One, you can pack it up and call it a day and try again another time. This is a safe move because sometimes if you continue with a bad practice, you can teach yourself some bad habits. You can keep pushing an issue that really isn't an issue, you're just having an off day, and you can undo a lot of hard work that you've been developing over the last weeks and months. That's entirely possible. The second option is you stick around, you adjust your range a whole lot closer, and from there you just have a light practice. Maybe you do a little bit less reps than you planned on, but you do it at a way light intensity. You go through the motions so you're not losing anything. But that's something you have to play by ear. If you're really new into practicing, new into the Highland Games, I don't think cutting in practice because it's an off day is really an option. At some point in the early stages of throwing, everything's going to be really hard. Nothing's going to come easy. These are odd events. You need a ton of reps before you really understand what a bad practice actually feels like. And so I think option number 2 for a lot of early, newer throwers is going to be way more beneficial than just calling it, because you still need to get those reps in, get the work in. Okay, so now what we do is called a mock games, and a mock games is where you practice all 9 events, or as many as you have access to, and you kind of run through that for about 5 reps at competition intensity. The kind of idea behind it is you're going to simulate like 2 practice throws and 3 competition throws. And for me, if I do those 3 competition throws and they were pretty good, I will take 2 or 3 more and to kind of simulate extras. So when you're looking at in a competition, if you win an event, you get access usually to 3 extra attempts. So that's kind of how I do the throws portion. Also on the mock games, I will try and find out what kind of trig the competition uses. Are they using a wing trig, a big box trig? Are they using small box like straight trig? And I will do whatever, I'll try to do whatever they're doing to match the competition. And just like with, for weights, for instance, I will try to find out if they're using D handles or ring handles, and kind of just, again, do what they're doing. It's not a huge deal. I think it does help a little bit to kind of just already kind of go in there, part of your mental pre-game stuff, to not be surprised, like, oh, they're using these and I've been practicing with those. It's not a big deal, but I do think it helps. And so mock games I will usually do on a Monday or Tuesday, the week of competition. That gives me plenty of time to get this throwing session in and get the 1 or 2 other lifting days that I planned on doing before the competition starts on Saturday or Sunday, whenever you are competing. Okay, a typical week for me for my gym / throwing practice split, it's gonna be Monday. I'm gonna go to the gym and I'm gonna throw sheaf or WOB, depending on what I'm doing or need work on. Tuesday it's gonna be stones, lightweight, heavy hammer. Wednesday it's just gonna be the gym, but I generally will do some kind of open stone drill, some shot put type drills. And then Thursday, we're looking at stones, heavyweight, light hammer. Friday, it's gym and WOB or sheaf, depending on, again, what I need and want to do. Saturday and Sunday, it's going to be stones, lightweight, light hammer. It's usually Saturday or Sunday. Sometimes I do both, and I will switch up what those 3 events look like on those days, depending what I need work with, need more work on, and also what I feel like doing. That's a typical split for me. It may not work for you, so it's because it's kind of a lot, and everyone's got life and family and work and things like that they got to contend with. I think though, for the bare minimum, it's going to be like 3 throwing practices a week. I'm not too concerned with, like, especially in season, how many times someone would be lifting. It's more how many times are they throwing during the week. And I think 3, you're going to get a stones practice, a lightweight, a heavyweight, a heavy hammer, and a light hammer. I think those are very critical to get at least once in during the week. And then you'll kind of mix and match those with sheaf and WOB and cover all your bases. Okay, that's basically it. And again, none of these are my ideas, it's just stuff I've compiled from friends, athletes, and coaches over the years. That's what's working for me. It's working pretty well these days. A couple things to note is that you don't have to do the gym and throwing split that I do. It can be a lot. The idea is to just get as much throwing in during the week as you can, and have it to be a meaningful practice. The more analytical you can get with your practice, the more time you're going to save on that learning curve and trying to get a lot of those little tweaks dialed in, okay? On saving time, you don't have to listen to anyone and everyone who tells you how to throw. Just because you have a buddy who's been in the games and been throwing a little bit longer than you, and his PRs are a little bit further than yours, doesn't mean he knows what he's talking about. He might, but you gotta remember there are other resources out there that can help you. There are tons of people on YouTube putting out a lot of good content, and I will link all of them below. You just gotta go looking for them, and you gotta watch and want to learn. And pretty much every top level amateur and professional in the country has a social media presence. and they'll be more than willing to have a conversation with you about your throws and any questions you have. Some of them will even watch your videos and give you some like tips and techniques off of that. Just got to remember, be polite and don't waste their time, because having an expert have eyes on your videos is invaluable. It's very helpful. But that's all I have. Hope it helps. If you guys have any questions, you can like send me a message on Instagram or comment down below. Thank you, Throw Far. God bless.